Hello and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. Today we are so excited to have Claris Perkins, a registered dietitian. Claris, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Virginia.
Yes. So, Claris, real quick, can you just give us an introduction to what you do and who you are
Yeah,
professionally?
I am Claris Perkins. I am a registered dietitian at the Mobile County Health Department, and I provide nutrition education to patients of all different ages and life stages. So I've seen newborns and infants, and I've seen patients that are in their 80s and 90s. And my goal is to just help them or their families make healthy choices so that they can continue living healthy, long lives.
Wow, wonderful.
Is that a good
Um,
summary?
yeah, you nailed it, girl. You nailed it. So, Claris, especially since this is essentially my podcast, like we really don't have any pressure. Um, I want to kind of debrief on our relationship.
Yes.
So Claris and I work together in the Aura Wellness Suite.
Hmm.
And one of the most fun things about it was not only our connection and how much fun she is, but how our professions crossed over from the mental health side to the nutrition side. So, like, even little things like training on motivational interviewing, you get some training on that too, correct?
Yeah, that's how the best way for us to interview patients is motivational interviewing. So we definitely have crossover with that.
Yeah. And there is science to positive change, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, really looking back on how we met professionally,
Yeah.
I learned so much from you just seeing, how you counsel patients, your energy with patients, the advice you would give them, and even just an understanding of where our scopes intersect, but then where there is kind of that divide of, I can guide you through some of these things, but at some point, you, Virginia, are the more appropriate professional for helping them with different coping skills. And then same thing, I think with me is you had a couple patients where you were like, I've guided them along this path, but I think we're at a point with food specifically where maybe it was more appropriate for me.
Right, right.
And that was
And
fun.
it was so much fun. We were literally in the same suite.
Across the
And
hall from each other.
yeah, and so like literally and figuratively, like when we see like, all right, this patient needs to cross over and get that specialized care, um, that's what we did, and it worked, didn't it?
Yeah. Sometimes
Yeah.
they would literally cross the hall and say, "Oh, hey, I need to reschedule, whatever."
Yeah. And it really was so great for them and such a convenience for them because then they could like meet you briefly or vice versa and meet me briefly. And then we just say, no problem, let's set you up.
Well, and I think too, because if you've never seen a dietitian or if you've never received counseling, I think it can be really intimidating to open that door and take that first step. But when
Yeah.
if they've already established a relationship with you, then they meet me and they think, okay, wow, okay, I don't feel judged by her, or I don't, I feel like this is something I can approach and handle, then that makes that first step for them a little bit easier. And then vice versa. If I have a patient who is
Yeah.
getting nutrition and they've never done counseling and maybe they have a stigma with that or they're intimidated by that, once they meet you, they're immediately comfortable because you are so welcoming and easy to be around and talk to.
Well, that's how I feel about you. And so we really, we made a great team. And I completely agree. I can imagine like the same way it is for therapists, it is for someone meeting with a dietitian is like, okay, do I like her? Like, does she have, does she make me feel safe to accept her advice even?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay,
absolutely.
well, I have been very excited about this, partly selfishly. I honestly have even considered like how great would it be if I started meeting with a registered dietitian,
Totally.
because health is so important, and I know it impacts your mood, everything, your sleep, everything. So Claris, God, where to begin? Geez. So I guess one thing that I was curious about too is like how you see food impacting mood. Can you kind of elaborate on how there is a correlation there with food and mood?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and everyone's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a good place to start is even just thinking about being hangry. When we are
Yeah.
hungry, literally you can't focus, you're more upset, you're irritable. And so even just the stage of having not eaten can impact your mood. But then you get into how different foods impact you. And again, this is so individual, but there for a lot of people, if they have like really greasy foods or heavy sugar foods, these do create stress on your body just to metabolize them and to digest them. And you can
Yeah.
feel that emotionally. Um, and so it absolutely does play a part. Even guilt, people that are trying really hard to eat healthy, if they do find themselves in a situation where they've made choices that they wish they hadn't, it kind of creates that cycle of I wish I hadn't done that. They kind of beat themselves up about it. Um, and
Right.
that's not to say that you have to eat healthy all the time or you're going to be mad and sad and guilty. But part of where our relationships do intersect is having that healthy relationship with food and saying, okay,
Mhm.
I'm going to have pizza tonight. I'm really excited about it. And that's a treat. And maybe you don't feel so hot after, but it was a treat that you looked forward to versus this cycle of like I'm unprepared, I don't have lunch, I'm getting fast food, I wish I hadn't done that. That's not a treat. That's
Right.
a habit that we really wished we didn't have.
Right. And I definitely know there's a psychological impact when you start feeling out of control.
Totally.
And right. And that's what happens, like when, for example, you don't plan and you're starving. And so you roll up into McDonald's, and then
Yeah.
you feel a lack of control after you eat a lot of greasy, high sugar foods.
Well, for the most part, if someone's making a meal plan for themselves or a menu for the week, I don't think I've met anyone who's like on Monday I'm going to get McDonald's, on Tuesday I'm going to get Taco Bell. That's
Mhm.
what happens when we aren't prepared.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like that was your biggest hack that I learned from you is like meal planning,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that kind of goes into, okay, well, what about those of us who don't like to cook and see it as a chore? Like how to prepare for the week. Is there any thing you might recommend doing in kind of setting yourself up for success in healthy foods?
Yeah, and I think the first thing you said is the biggest part of that is for those of us who don't like to. And
Yeah.
a part of that is knowing yourself. So if you said to me, Clarice, I don't like to cook, I don't like to meal prep. Well, I'm not going to give you a Sunday recipe list for the week that's going to take you 6 hours.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it would be okay, well, what is quick and easy that still sets you up for success? Maybe that's a rotisserie chicken is your protein, or canned tuna or deli meat. Maybe you don't buy the head of romaine, but you buy the chopped romaine. If you are someone who says, I do not like being in the kitchen, don't plan to spend time in the kitchen. You know,
Yeah. Don't
think of
force it.
Right. Think of foods that you like and that you want a vegetable, you want a lean protein, you want some whole grains. But all of those food groups have options that don't require you to be slaving away in the
Hmm.
kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I hear that some people love like a crock pot that they make something like a good soup
Mhm.
on Sunday and then they can have leftovers through the week. Any particular food recipes or anything that are easy that you would recommend on, say, a Sunday?
Yeah, I do like a crock pot. Instant pot is quick and easy. My favorite, I like to start with Pinterest. I'm a Pinterest gal.
Yeah,
I just type in like quick, healthy summer lunch, quick, healthy summer dinner. Um, because I want variety throughout the week, but also want variety throughout the year. And if we're shopping seasonally, it's going to be a little bit cheaper and the food's going to be better. So if you're someone who likes tomato, zucchini, squash, summer's your time to do it because that's when they're going to taste the best. And so kind of thinking that way and using
yeah.
keywords quick, easy, healthy, um, and for the most part, it'll kind of filter and give you the options that you're looking for. Another one I like is sheet pan meals or one pan dinner because
Okay.
everything will be the recipe's goal is that everything can be cooked on one pan or one pot. So you kind of know, okay, this is not going to be, I'm not going to have the stove and the oven going. It's going to be one thing. It's going to be easier.
Cool. I like that. And we'll definitely attach these things to the show notes. One pan dinner, huh? I've never heard of that.
Sheet pan dinners. Yeah.
Sheet
They have
pan.
whole recipe, like whole cookbooks that are just one pot meals, one pan.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because a big part of cooking is also cleaning up the entire kitchen.
Right. It is. It is. Um, well, I kind of want to take a closer look into, say, you've got someone in your office, they do want to change. Where do they start? Like, what might be your counsel as a registered dietitian in helping them make change happen?
Well, it really depends on where they're starting from. My,
Right, right.
I've kind of got anywhere between 3 and 5 go-to goals. So I like to start with drinks and snacks because if I feel like those are comfortable places for people to start. If someone's truly on the end of the spectrum where we really need to change most everything,
Yeah,
snacks are usually places where they feel comfortable making changes. To change a drink choice doesn't take a whole lifestyle overhaul. Um, and same thing with snacks. It's a smaller meal. It doesn't feel as intimidating. So I start with drinks
hmm,
and snacks, and then I'll go to meals, um, and kind of see, okay, where do we eat our meals? What do they look like? Do we understand what a vegetable is and what a protein is? Kind of providing that education and understanding,
yeah,
getting them comfortable with kind of things we talked about. Can we plan out a menu? Um, is 7 days too intimidating? Should we just do 2 days at a time? Um, are we comfortable in the
sure.
grocery store? Are we, those types of skills, kind of gauging that. And then
Yeah,
also looking at sleep and exercise, because we mentioned that at the beginning, but those play such a big role. If we aren't well rested, we don't make good choices. If we don't make good choices, we don't feel good, we don't sleep well, so kind of that whole circle.
yeah. And then exercise too. I know just even in my own experience, when I'm physically active and I exercise, it's almost like I want to eat better.
Yeah. Well, and studies have shown if you're active, your mental health is so much better. You're less
Yeah.
likely to be depressed. And then we're less likely to see that more emotional eating.
Right, right. Because with disordered eating, from what I've learned with experience, treating and caring for patients, and well, I call them clients now that I'm in private practice, um, is that overeating or in eating disorders in general is a means of unhealthy coping,
Mhm.
um, and related to food. So whether you binge eat or you restrict completely, there's oftentimes that emotional component that's kind of propelling those disordered eating habits.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then I like what you were saying earlier about just gauging where they are, because that's really the spirit of motivational interviewing is like, don't just create a map for someone and say, all right, do it.
right.
You really gotta be curious of where they are. Okay, what's a reasonable goal? Is it having a cooked meal twice a week? Is 7 days a little heavy? Like what is a reasonable goal to start with and
And
start there.
even what's a goal that they care about? Because I can say to you, let's talk about drinks, but they might say, I want to talk about snacks. So I can talk
Right.
about drinks all day, but if someone doesn't care about drinks, then I
They're
haven't helped them.
no, they're gonna glaze over and say, all right, when are we done here?
Right.
Yeah. So you got to have that buy-in.
Yeah.
And that might give a tip to parents too that are trying to help their kids and teens eat better. It's like, all right, sometimes they get tired of the lectures. Like, let's start with something they like. If they like fruit, let's have more fruit
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of forcing broccoli or whatever.
Yeah. Kids are like
Right.
a whole
So
other ball game.
let's get into kids a little bit. So I know that can you share with us a little bit about like what you see with malnutrition and obesity in kids right now?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of wild that we can live in a country where we have both malnourished children that are also obese,
Right.
and I think I've had this conversation with a lot of people recently. I don't know whose responsibility it is at this point. I know my grandmother and my mom had home ec classes where they learned how to cook, what does a healthy meal look like. I don't know about you, I didn't have a class like that.
No.
Patients I talked to in the WIC program, a lot of young parents don't know. I don't know what to do with a can of beans. I don't know, I mean, like really basic kitchen skills are so foreign now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, I don't know whose responsibility, if it's the responsibility of the home or responsibility of the school, or maybe a mixture of both. But,
Mm-hmm.
if we don't know and we aren't comfortable in a kitchen, it is really hard to have foods that are healthy for children. So if you grew up in a house where breakfast was a Pop Tart and snack is Doritos and lunch is McDonald's and dinner is frozen pizza, that's not unusual now, but you aren't adequately nourishing a growing child or an adult. So, you're providing a lot of calories, so they're going to have enough energy to grow and to play, and they seem fine. But of all the foods I mentioned, there's not a single natural nutrient in any of those foods. So we're not getting, calcium for strong bones. We're not getting, all those things that children need.
Yeah.
So we are seeing them be malnourished, but because these are so caloric, they're also overweight or obese.
So I know that like there's resources like myplate.gov.
Love
Does
that.
does that go into like how to support your child too? Maybe?
Myplate.gov is amazing. They've got,
Yeah.
I print handouts to provide to families from that website.
Mm-hmm.
And there are tons of resources for all ages. I mean, you can find things for infants, toddlers, children, teens, adults, all of, any topic you could want. My plate's made something about it. And so it really is a good place to start if you don't know what a meal should look like, or how to navigate a grocery store. That's, I think, a really good place to start.
Mm-hmm. What about the whole power struggle and difficulty with getting really, especially small children or toddlers? I have one myself, who will not and do not want to eat the really healthy foods like eggs, turnip greens, things that I'm putting on her plate. And she's just going for the cheese. Like how do I
Yeah.
how do I navigate that like from your field, from your point of view?
Yeah. So my go-to advice for this, and let me preface this with I have never fed a toddler. I have a very small baby.
Yeah.
And so I have not like actually encountered this yet. But what I've encouraged parents to do, and if you try this, let me know if it works, is, looking at your child's plate, you want to have two safe foods, right? So maybe that's cheese and a whole grain cracker, or maybe
Mhm.
that's peanut butter and fruit, whatever. And then have
Yeah.
one that's more of like a stretch food. Okay.
Yeah.
I know
Okay.
she doesn't love broccoli. The most important thing is for her to see it and to touch it and to play with it. And maybe she doesn't eat it at all. That's okay. You put it on her plate. She's going to eat the foods that you know she likes. We have those two safe foods. She's going to get enough
Yeah.
to eat. But it can take a child sometimes 10 to 12 times just seeing a food before they try it. And it can take them just as many
Oh.
times to try it to decide if they like it. So your job as the parent isn't to say, well, take 3 bites and then you can have cheese, or then we go to bed. Just put it on the plate.
Yeah.
If she touches it, that's a win. If she puts it in her mouth, that's huge. If she eats it, that's great. If she doesn't, put it in a Tupperware. You can have it for lunch tomorrow or throw it away if she's made a toy out of it. And just continue to bring it around.
Wow. I'm really affirmed right now.
Because it's
I
okay.
must
I mean,
have
she
gathered
will.
that. Yeah, I must have gathered that from different because I love podcasts. Or maybe I just knew intuitively. I'm not really sure, but I do that.
That's
I
great.
and I've encouraged my husband to like, look, we know that all she's eating is cheese and crackers, but let's put on these other things and almost like gently encourage, but not force her
Yeah.
to eat it.
Other things that really
Yeah.
help is if you're eating as a family, and if she sees you and dad eating broccoli, it
Yes.
maybe will be curious about it.
Oh yeah. Like even
Um,
last night I had salad on her plate and I was, she usually hates it when I eat off her plate, but she was letting me eat the salad. But I was like, oh, it's so good. Like,
yeah,
but really showing my own like pleasure with these foods that she doesn't like just yet.
yeah. And
So
green flags are very normal at that age for them to be like, I only want to eat cheese and crackers. I'm obsessed with it. And then it shifts to something else. And just putting that
yeah.
variety on their plate is the best thing you can do. It
Hmm.
helps give them that healthy relationship with food. I grew up in a clean your plate household.
Yeah.
Eat everything that's on there, and then you can have dessert. So it was not only did you have to eat everything, but the reward was dessert. And so and it doesn't
Yeah.
seem like a big deal, but that doesn't create the healthy relationship with food. That doesn't let a child decide, okay, I'm actually full now because the parent has said you have to eat it all. So I
Mhm.
think we're kind of learning that how we kind of guide and how we plate foods for children, shifting it just a little bit makes a big difference.
Yeah. And having the plates colorful, just like we try to have our own plates for healthy eating.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. You really bring up that intuitive eating that I've learned about.
It's
Um,
hard.
you know,
It's hard.
right? Of just like, and that's a great reason to not force your child to eat everything on their plate and then have dessert, because what if they're full? But intuitive eating, from what I've gathered, is mainly just like pay attention to your cues, your hunger cues. And when you're full, stop eating, and things
Yeah.
like that. Anything
Well,
you want
and
to speak on with that?
yeah, so I intuitive eating is a really hard place to get to. And for some people,
Yeah.
it's not the best course of treatment. But
Hmm.
when we talk about children for the most part are natural intuitive eaters. They they will stop eating when they're full. And I think now having a child, I'm so hyper aware of, even just with bottles that people are giving him, if he's turning his head, if he's pushing it out, he's done. He doesn't have to finish it. If he's showing you, if he's whining an hour later, give him the rest of the bottle, but
Mhm.
starting that from an early age, not forcing them to eat things, if they'll let you know when they're hungry.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and kind of
You
teaching them that that's how we want them
Mhm.
to do that.
And you mentioned for I know we're kind of going switching gears a little bit, but you mentioned that for some people intuitive eating isn't the best course of treatment or recommendation. What do you mean there? Do you mean like that for some people like really regimented, balanced, structured meals is best to start out with kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think that intuitive eating, I think, is like a dream goal, right?
Right.
If we
Yeah.
can get there to where we are recognizing that we're full and we're recognizing when we're hungry, that's amazing. But
Mm-hmm.
most people are so far from that
Mm-hmm.
it's confusing. It's like, okay, so I'm hungry now. Am I? I don't know. And so starting with more of a, this is a typical day of eating. This is when people are typically hungry, and working on, having healthy foods available. Those are really more of a priority, I think, than
Mm-hmm.
than starting with listen to your body. I feel like,
Yeah.
and I that's just been my experience, is that I
Yeah.
see more success if we can start with the healthy choices and then
Mm-hmm.
move into the how are we feeling part of it.
I could not agree more. And I think that really makes sense, especially if, there could be a slippery slope with, all right, I'm craving ice cream. Let's go.
Right, right.
And if they haven't gotten to a point of, in a way, cleansing their body of all the high processed foods and that sort of thing. And people do better with structure in general, people and children.
Yeah,
So kind of starting there and then working like you said, intuitive eating is more aspirational, like once you really get behind healthy eating in general, then you might really gain that momentum and be able to be in touch with your body.
yeah.
um
And I
yeah.
really don't recommend it for someone who has a chronic disease. So if someone has diabetes and their health is really dependent on what they're putting in their body, it's maybe not ever the most appropriate thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. um well, and I remember when I was pregnant, I craved fruit. And so,
Yeah,
like that's kind of the way I started with it, is just like, yeah, my body clearly, or pickles. I mean,
yeah.
so that's pretty cool. All right, Claris. Well, I know that we were trying to stay within the parameters of 30 minutes, but obviously I could talk to you for hours. And I can't tell you how grateful I am that you came on our show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's always
Yeah, and
fun talking with you.
I know, girl. Hopefully we can do a game night soon or something.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And honestly, every time I talk to you, I'm inspired to eat better and do better. You really are an inspiration, and I really appreciate all that you do for our community too.
Thank you for doing
Oh, you're blushing. Just kidding. All right. Well, that's a wrap. So, viewers, hopefully this was something helpful to you, and we hope you have a wonderful Wisdom Wednesday. Bye.
Bye.